time no see, but with a final like this one coming up, it's probably better late than never. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. It's been a little while, hasn't it? I think it's been since Wimbledon that I've been absent. You know, the work's picking up. I've got a lot of different things going on, but US Open finals time has arrived and it has been quite the tournament at the US Open. I said previously that the US Open, the fourth and final Grand Slam of the year, can sometimes feel a little bit like the tired remains of a long season. It's not always the best watch of the four Grand Slams on offer. It's definitely been a different story this time around. It has been a really entertaining first week, a lot of surprising results and matches that were won rather than lost. And heading into the back end of the second week, we have two intriguing finals and must-watch finals for very different reasons. We're kicking off the previews with the women's final. Now, if you called this one ahead of the event, congrats, but as much as I like a good prediction, done well, which is rare, I cannot say that I called this from round one. Midway through the tournament, you could see that things were lining up for it. Before the tournament, no way. But as we say, anything can happen on the WTA. And that is how we've ended up with the final of two teenagers for the first time since 1999. It is Leylah Fernandez, the giant slayer, up against qualifier Emma Raducanu. First ever qualifier in the Open era to reach a Grand Slam final. So there is a lot to break down here, a lot to weigh up and look into. The two of them have had very impressive runs for completely contrasting reasons. I can't remember the last time two players made a Grand Slam final with such contrasting routes to the final round. So it definitely does make it tougher to call, but it really makes it interesting as well. So looking forward to digging into this. We'll have a look at the paths that both players have taken to this round. Then I'll look at each player individually and kind of break down what they do well and different things about them. And then we'll look at what might go down in the final, which takes place tonight or early hours if you're on the other side of the world in Australia. And I know you have to pull a hard shift for this one, so credit to you. So let's get going then with the lower ranked player. In that case, this is Emma Raducanu, who is world number 150. But the thing you need to know about Raducanu is she's just not been competing for 16 to 18 months prior to the month of Wimbledon. She had been just based in the UK, and obviously there had been the pandemic. So apart from the domestic events in the UK, she wasn't competing. If you don't compete, you can't improve the ranking next to your name. So particularly at this point in time, you should not be taking too much from those numbers, and she certainly proved that here at the US Open. Her second Grand Slam main draw after reaching the fourth round of Wimbledon, and she's in the final. She has done just amazingly well. And obviously it started in qualifying, so 3 qualifying wins for Raducanu, and she dropped a handful of games along the way. She actually had her closest set so far in the second round of qualifying, but still won that match in straight sets, 6-3, 7-5. She has looked imperious in terms of how she's handled herself and kept her focus, because she still hasn't dropped a set. So 3 straight set wins in qualifying, including one over the number 4 seed Mayar Sharif, 6-1, 6-4. And then it got serious because she reached the main draw, second main draw, and Raducanu is a big match player, a big stage player, and just loving life and loving tennis at the moment. So she was fully ready to embrace this. Stephanie Vergele, lucky loser in round 1. That was a nice match to start with. Vergele not quite the player she once was, and Raducanu already with the feel for the conditions at the US Open. That is a benefit that the qualifiers have, the fact that they've already got used to the way the ball is flying, got used to the whole feel of the Grand Slam. So she definitely utilised that, Raducanu, for 6-2, 6-3 over Vergele. Then it was Zhang Shui. Now, that was an interesting one because Raducanu actually lost to Zhang a few weeks ago at one of the only WTA events that she's played. That was after Wimbledon, so there was a little bit of hype around as well. But I think that it worked well for Raducanu that she'd already had that experience of playing the opponent so recently. Raducanu herself now had more of an insight and more of a knowledge as to what Zhang could do with her game, and there were no surprises on the court. So 6-2, 6-4 for Raducanu in round 2, and round 3 I think is the round where, I mean, Raducanu has become already a global star since Wimbledon with the mainstream media attention that she's getting. But the third round, I think, is where everyone started going crazy because she beat Sara Sorribes Tormo 6-love, 6-1. I'm going to be very boring here. I was not surprised by that result. Maybe a little bit by the intensity of it, only dropping one game. But, you know, Sorribes Tormo, as much as she has progressed and developed, the forehand has become really good and a weapon across surfaces, not just on clay. And she obviously got that win over Ashley Barty at the Olympics, so that was big. But Raducanu, with the way she takes the ball early and with the way she's proactive from the first ball, particularly on the return, she had the weapons and the ability to just stop Sorribes Tormo bringing her weapons out and to get on the front foot early. And that's what she did all the way through the match. So 6-love, 6-1 in round 3. And then she was really in the spotlight, but she's done a great job of just keeping tunnel vision and keeping focus. So in round 4, Shelby Rogers, could have been Ashley Barty, who served for it at 5-2 in the third set against Rogers, but ran out of steam, and Raducanu fully made the most of it. 6-2, 6-1 over Rogers. And then she finally came and faced her first seeds in the quarterfinal. That was the Olympic gold medalist Belinda Bencic. So Bencic had a lot of confidence. What she didn't have was a plan B, and Raducanu completely exposed that. Bencic started the match well, she was serving well, and she was keeping the rallying balls deep and central so as not to give Raducanu an angle, because with her great lateral movement, when Raducanu gets an angle, she's on a roll. But Raducanu started to warm up, the Bencic serve went off a bit, she lost her early break, and from then she just panicked, and she didn't try to change anything up, Bencic, and I know it's not her game style, really, but she didn't have anything to trouble the rhythm of Raducanu with. And so it was 6-3, 6-4 for Raducanu, her closest scoreline of the main draw. So that just tells you how well she's been able to compose herself here. And she did so again in the semi-final. People were trying to throw doubts. I wish that I'd filmed, you know, a preview and predictions video for the semi-finals, because I would have taken Raducanu and Fernandez, for a large reason for that being that people, they really underestimate these young players, and the fact that when you're young and you've got your whole career ahead of you, you can swing freely, you can enjoy it, you can embrace it, you can approach the matches with such tenacity. And you've got two players there in Maria Sakkari, who played Raducanu, and Arina Sabalenka, who played Leylah Fernandez, who, yeah, they might be in good form, but they've also never reached a Grand Slam final. And everyone was suddenly expecting them to win, it seemed like, for some reason, because they were the seeded players, but all the weight of expectation was on their shoulders. So the tightness, while it was painful to see, it was definitely understandable. So Sakkari had breakpoint in the opening game. She had another few in her second return game. Didn't capitalize on any of those because Raducanu really is doing well to find her spots on the serve when she's under pressure. And from there, it was a little bit of a meltdown from Sakkari. She left the court in tears, and it's no surprise because she had a heartbreaking loss in the semis of Roland Garros to Barbara Krejcikova. She had match point there, and I thought that would really motivate her to come out here and put out a better performance against Raducanu. But in a similar manner to Bencic, she just didn't try to change anything up. And you've got to credit Raducanu for that in a way, because of the way she takes the ball early and because of the position she keeps on the court where she can reach the majority of balls. And with Sakkari's tightness, it would have been tougher to change things up as well, because you've got to be loose to play the drop shot. You have to have real confidence, and she was quickly losing that as the match rolled on. But credit to Raducanu, first Grand Slam semi-final, ranked 150, took it all in her stride, did not blink until the match was over. 6-1, 6-4, and she's looking very, very good heading into the final, which will be her toughest match yet, or even if it doesn't show it in scoreline ultimately, it will be her toughest opponent yet, even though she's unseeded, in world number 73, Leylah Fernandez. Another player who's been on my radar for some time. It was only a matter of time. And for me, for the wider world, I think this run is probably less surprising than the run of Raducanu. Fernandez has had a completely opposite draw to Raducanu. Completely opposite. She has had, I think, the toughest run at a major that I've seen in a long, long time. And her tenacity and her resolve has just been incredible. So honestly, however this ends, I think Fernandez is player of the tournament for me, with the way she's been able to handle herself in all these matches. All her opponents have been previous top 20 players or current top 20 players, multiple Grand Slam champions. You've just got to applaud what she's been doing here in New York. So first round was against Anna Konju, who was such a promising junior, but injuries have really dogged her path. So that was 7-6, 6-2 for Fernandez, and another straightforward straight sets win over the only other non-seeder that she's faced so far, Kaya Kanepi, 7-5, 7-5 for Fernandez. You can see there are some tight sets there, and she's been able to keep her focus and keep her intensity to come through those moments. So that would have been a real confidence boost. Heading into a clash with two-time former champion, defending champion, Naomi Osaka, that was almost over with Fernandez on the wrong side of the scoreline. Osaka served for the match at 7-5, 6-5. Fernandez having hung so tough with her, but just tossed in a loose service game at 6-5 in the second, at 5-all, sorry, in the second set, probably thinking about what had happened in the previous set. But credit to her, she just never gives up. She 100% is an amazing example of being able to stay in the moment and not think about the overall scoreboard. Osaka came out to serve for the match, and yes, she wasn't clinical, but Fernandez was emphatic with the placement of her returns. She was taking the ball early. She was doing what she had done throughout the match with Osaka, that Osaka had struggled with, but she was doing it cleaner and better, sending the balls deep to Osaka to take the angle away, pushing her back, rushing her, making her feel like she was short on time. And for someone of the firepower of Osaka, that's not something that she's used to. And as Fernandez refused to give way, Osaka did start to disintegrate and to toss in some errors as the match wore along. She checked her racket a few times in the tiebreak, not something you often see from her, and it just tells you about the frustration that Fernandez was causing as she rode the energy of the crowd and nailed all kinds of ridiculous angles to come through 5-7, 7-6, 6-4. So that was when I think people really started to consider Fernandez a contender, particularly when she backs up that win with an even better performance against Angelique Kerber, Wimbledon semi-finalist, who has been in seriously, seriously good form. So Angelique Kerber, the number 16 seed, doesn't tell you about her level at the moment. I would put her top 10 for sure. And Fernandez able to come through against Kerber 4-6, 7-6, 6-2. At the back end of the match, Kerber was just shrugging and saying two goods because Fernandez was making every single ball. And for Kerber, I think it would have felt a lot like looking in a mirror because she was playing a fellow lefty, another player that could execute ridiculously acute angles on the court. And Kerber was at her best, spreading the court, using every inch of it. And Fernandez was just throwing the balls back at her with interest. So it was massive what Fernandez did there to back up such a brilliant victory over Osaka with another one of such high quality against Kerber in 3 sets. And it has been 3 sets every match since that Osaka match, but for good reason, because she's been up against some stiff opposition. Alina Svitolina, the number 5 seed, well, I've said time and again she has a ceiling. She also has a lot of confidence at the moment. I think winning that bronze medal match at the Olympics and squeezing through it was huge for her. And she battled with intensity against Fernandez. In the final set, she committed to moves up the court and tried to back herself, but that came back to bite her because Fernandez just never knows when she's done. And at 5-all in the final set tiebreak, back against the wall, fired a running pass down the line, served out the win. Slimmest of margins. Mentally, she was there for them like she'd done it a million times before, and that was hugely impressive. So 6-3, 3-6, 7-6 for Fernandez over Svitolina. And then the semi-final against the number 2 seed Aryna Sabalenka. Now, look, I can understand why people were predicting Sabalenka to win this one. She reached the semi-finals at Wimbledon. She can generate firepower like no one else on tour at the moment. She gets a ridiculous amount of pace on her serve and on her ground strokes. but she's still a little bit one-dimensional for me. And although she streaked out to the 4-1 lead, barely letting Fernandez get into play and just brushing her off the court, it was going to be a task to sustain that kind of level all the way through the match, when Fernandez's biggest strength is really her tenacity and her ability to hold on and not know when she's finished. And for Fernandez, I think the turning point in that match was at 4-1 down. She wasn't having much joy in any position off the ground. Sabalenka was getting a first serve in nicely and striking consistently into the Fernandez backhand, which is the weaker wing and where you're going to draw a few more errors. So she was getting a lot of success there. But Fernandez kept her cool. She problem solved and she fired down 3 aces and an unreturned serve to hold for 2-4 in the opening set, and that completely jolted Sabalenka's rhythm. It brought her back to earth. Fernandez got her teeth in. She got that first set in a tie break, and I feel like that first set was pretty crucial because it gave her breathing room. Sabalenka doesn't tend to lose matches in straight sets these days, so it definitely gave her some time to have a little bit of a drop off at the moment at the back end of the second set and then regroup to come through strong. So 7-6, 4-6, 6-4 for Leylah Fernandez to set up this all-teenage final, the first of those since Serena Williams won the event in 1999. And these players were not born at that point in time, so it's been a while. Look, this one is going to be ridiculously tough to call, not just because these two are unexpected finalists, but because their runs have been so contrasting that it is so tough to compare. Even the numbers, with my predictions recently, I've been paying a lot more attention to numbers and statistics, but the caliber and quality of opposition has been so different that it's hard to actually weigh those things up. But we're going to have a go. A quick word on both players then. So Fernandez, seeing as I've just been talking about her, Fernandez, she was always going to come through. I remember commentating on the first match where she won back-to-back WTA main draw matches for the first time. So yeah, she beat Nao Habino, who was the number 8 seed in Mexico, for her first back-to-back WTA main draw wins in February 2020. And even though it was an opponent that is not of the caliber of the opponents that she's faced today, there were things that immediately stood out about Fernandez. One of those was how she thrived with her back against the wall. She actually played her best tennis at break points down, and she was really brave with the second serve, and she just backed herself, and she was so complete with the options that she had in her game, the drop shot, the slice, the athleticism that she has, the way she's able to cover the court. It was quite clear that she was special. I was asked on a podcast actually later that year who I thought was the best teenager on tour at that point in time. I think they were expecting me to say Coco Gauff or someone. I said Fernandez. And for months since then, I've been kind of wondering what hasn't come together for her, seeing as she already looked like the complete package. Maybe it was confidence in those big matches, and she certainly found it here. So full credit to Fernandez, and I rate her so extremely highly. I know a lot of people are playing down her chances long term because she's a smaller player and she has to work a lot harder for certain things. But I think she's so well-rounded and she's got depth in her game. And in the current WTA game, that's half the battle, because times are changing. You go through cycles of players with the same game style. The Williams sisters introduced the big hitting power game to the circuit, and now the likes of Bianca Andreescu and Ashley Barty are steering everyone towards the variety, the versatility, which I would say to an extent both of these players in the final possess, which leads me on to Raducanu and her incredible lateral movement. For a lot of people, Raducanu was a new name when she broke out at Wimbledon, because as a lot of you will know, I've been based largely in the UK for the past few years, and I worked on a lot of the British lockdown events. I've known Emma for a number of years now. I met her for the first time when she was 16 at an ITF event in the UK. I remember watching her beat Paula Badosa at that event. I think Badosa was the number 2 seed. Raducanu might have been there via a wild card. And I was left gasping by the routine winners that she was slapping against Badosa in a similar manner to what she did against Arribas Tormo and what she's done at moments here. So right from day one, it was obvious to me that she was going to be something. I'd already heard of her when she was 15 and winning ITF events. And because things have kind of ground to a halt and she's been mainly based in the UK, I guess it's been tougher for people worldwide to keep track of her. But I've seen her at all of these events last year, you know, and people can say that what she's doing now is surprising, which it is, because she's not been on the international circuit, but that does not mean that she's not faced quality opposition. So she played Battle of the Brits team tennis last season. She beat Katie Bolter, she pushed Heather Watson, she beat Andy Murray in a competitive mixed doubles match, and she fully embraced that moment. That told you everything about how much she loves a big match. The way she said afterwards, most fun I've ever had on a tennis court. Then she also played the British Tour. She had an ongoing rivalry with Jodie Burridge. She won the Classic Week, the finals week of the UK Pro League, which a lot of you will know is an event that I work a lot on now. So she definitely had the practice, even though it was behind closed doors, and the people around her have known that she was going to be special. They've been very careful about the interviews that she's done or not done, the events she's played or not played, just trying to keep her away from this hype before it inevitably would come at some point, because she has always been that good. She has developed a lot in the past couple of years. I know last summer her and her coach were working on that second tier below her game. Everyone knew she had a great backhand, good serve, very good return, but the forehand needed tightening up a bit. I think she's handled that very well here in New York. And they were working on the volley, the little drop shot option below that surface level. And I think that she's come into New York and shown everyone already at 18 years old what a complete player she is. Her issue now is that she's going up against another very complete player in Leylah Fernandez. And we have a very interesting scenario here because Emma Raducanu really knows how to win, but Leylah Fernandez at the moment has completely forgotten how to lose. So you've got these two situations. You've got Raducanu rolling, and you've got Fernandez fighting for her life and coming out on top every single time. What that tells me is that Raducanu probably, and I'm not going to say definitely, because I actually think with her confidence at the moment, she could take this in a straightforward straight setter. She is probably not going to get the win as comprehensively as she has done in her previous matches. And I just wonder how that will affect her, because as I was at Wimbledon, I've been waiting for the moment where she's been down a set or had her back against the wall, and what that does to her focus and what that does to her confidence. I remember talking to a couple of people that I know ahead of her match against Ajla Tomljanovic at Wimbledon. They were saying, oh, Emma's doing great. And I said, she is. She's doing fantastically. But she's not faced a seed yet, and I would be interested to see what happens to her when she's a set down. And we all saw what happened to her when she was a set down. Now, I don't see that happening again. I think that she's a smart girl. She learns quickly. She has taken the lessons from Wimbledon already and implemented them here in New York. She's been very free. Her joy is what has attracted a lot of people to her, and she's thoroughly swinging and embracing everything that comes her way, which is so refreshing to see when you look at the tightness of the players that are so desperate to do well. The freedom that Fernandez and Raducanu have competed with is just brilliant. But what makes it difficult to weigh these up is that, you know, the runs, as I've said, have been so different. To put it into perspective, Raducanu could conceivably win a Grand Slam here without ever having faced a top 10 opponent in her career. Meanwhile, Leylah Fernandez has beaten 3 top 5 seeds just to get to this point in the tournament. So when it comes to looking at the numbers, it is tough because the opposition has been so contrasting. Raducanu has had a number of opponents who just haven't had the depth and haven't challenged her and haven't put her in situations where she might crumble. And that has given her a lot of confidence that she will probably take into this match with Fernandez. So what's it going to come down to? It's interesting to look back at their previous meeting, I think, to date at the junior edition of Wimbledon in 2018. Raducanu won that match. I think it was 6-2, 6-4. and was able to handle what Fernandez was throwing at her. And these are two players that like to take the ball early, and they have very good anticipation. So it is going to be about who can be really sharp in that regard. An interesting factor for me is that Raducanu hasn't faced a lefty yet. So that brings its own challenges. Serve can be tougher to read, although I'm sure they will have poured over Fernandez performances to date and tried to get a feel for her serving patterns. But for Raducanu, one of her strengths this fortnight so far has been her ability to anticipate where the shots are going, get there in decent time, get good length on her shots and good angles on her shots, even from deep behind the baseline. That is going to be tougher against Fernandez because Fernandez does take the ball earlier and has that lefty element to her game, which makes it tougher to predict where she's going to strike her next shot. So that will take a little bit of a weapon away from Raducanu, I think. On the other hand, the one statistic that you can look at, which isn't really dictated by the opponent, so away from breakpoints saved and breakpoints converted, for example, is the serve. Because the serve is on the player's racket, so it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the court, really. You know, your serving numbers are your own. And looking through the serving numbers, Raducanu's have consistently been the marginally stronger. She is landing a very consistent high percentage of first serves all the way through the tournament. It's only dropped below 70% 3 times in her 9 matches, and even then it's been the high end of the 60s. So that they are massive numbers for Raducanu, and they've really given her the foundation to execute the game that she wants to play. She's won a high percentage of her second serve points as well, including every single second serve point that she played against Sorribes Tormo, which is kind of crazy. Fernandez, she's had a high first serve percentage generally as well. She hit 80% in her 3rd round match, and she's generally been winning a high percentage of those first serves, back end of 60s and above. But that number did drop in her last 2 matches against Sabalenka, and who was before Sabalenka, I'm forgetting now, Svitolina. She was down in the 50s in terms of first serve percentage. And with how great a returner and how proactive a returner Raducanu is, I think that those first serve numbers could be quite key. So that's definitely an interesting point. I mean, there's so much to dig into here. I think that Fernandez definitely has a better chance of extending the match than Raducanu's other opponents because of her grit and because of the fact that she will have a plan B. She will not stand there and throw in the same ball over and over again until she's beaten. So it is unlikely that Raducanu is going to get that same rhythm to her match. Every single match so far has followed a very similar rhythm. She's got off to a slow start, probably gone down an early break, and then she has sailed from there. Fernandez probably won't let her do that so easily because she knows how to hang on and she knows how to make it close. So how will Raducanu respond in that situation? Personally, I think she's very confident and focused, and maybe it won't bother her so much, but Fernandez is loving the energy, she's loving the crowd, she's loving the stage, and so it makes this very tough to call. I'm wondering how much to say before I actually talk about how this might end up. And I may disappoint a few people because I don't think I'm going to put a fine point prediction on this one. Those of you who usually watch my videos are used to me saying so-and-so to win in X number of sets. And because these runs are so contrasting and because so many variables balance each other out, it's tough for me to do that. Earlier in the event, after Fernandez beat Osaka, I thought, wow, well, if she keeps up this level, she wins hands down. But I felt in my gut over the last few rounds that actually Raducanu might snatch it because of the confidence that she has and because of how every area of her game is flowing. At the moment, there's not an obvious weakness, and it's tough to say whether there will be one because no one that she's gone up against yet has hung around long enough to test her out. They've crumbled, epic malfunctions from Bencic and Sakkari, if we're being completely honest. And as much as I would not have predicted Emma Raducanu Grand Slam finalist this year or Grand Slam champion this year, absolutely not. if you'd have given me each individual match that she's played so far, I would have picked her as the favourite in every single one, because she just has more to her game than all of those players that she's faced so far. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is what I'm going to bring it down to. I mean, Fernandez has wobbled in her matches, but she's been out on court long enough for those wobbles to occur. Raducanu hasn't really faced resistance, and Fernandez at the moment is the queen of resistance. So it's tough, you know. My gut is now saying Raducanu. I was leaning Fernandez a couple of rounds ago, or more recently, but the more I've looked at the numbers, the more I've looked at the confidence, I've started to lean towards Raducanu. But with the way Fernandez has the ability to extend this match with her run so far, and honestly, because of that run, it is going to look a little bit like a daylight robbery if she doesn't win this. I mean, Raducanu would completely deserve it and have earned it, but imagine beating that caliber of opposition all the way through and not winning the title. I mean, she will feel robbed if she doesn't win, but it's a very real possibility that she might not. So I'm going to bring it down to this. I think the most likely outcomes, if we're looking at what is most likely to happen, is probably either Emma Raducanu in straight sets or Leylah Fernandez in 3 sets. I think that's going to be my bottom line. Honestly, with the way these two are playing and competing, and with the energy of the crowd in New York, I think pretty much anything could happen. But I think that, you know, if Raducanu gets a good start and she susses Fernandez out early, she's not going to be overawed by the occasion of a final. I don't think she is. And so actually I can see her winning the match in a similar way to the way in which she's won her matches previously. Not so comprehensively, of course, because Fernandez hangs on. But because Fernandez hangs on, you know, there is every possibility that this could go the distance, and Fernandez does not know how to lose those kinds of matches anymore because her serve is so good under pressure. Her options are vast. Both of these two are really athletic, and we will see a lot of good rallies. And so my bottom line is that, yeah, I think that the most likely outcomes are Emma Raducanu in straight sets, maybe a tighter straight setter, or Leylah Fernandez in 3. I can equally see a number of other scenarios happening, but at the end of the day, I just want to say that these two have been brilliant this fortnight. It doesn't matter what their rankings are. They have come out and they've taken on the opposition placed in front of them, and they've done what they needed to do, and they've stayed loose, and they've sent clear messages to the more experienced players as to what is needed to produce at the highest level. That freedom, that energy, that tenacity. And they've done it incredibly well. So my hope for this final is just that these two are able to come out and handle the occasion, which I think they will, and produce a level of tennis that they're really happy with and that will be good for the sport. So I'm sorry that I'm not going to put a finer point on it this time around, but you know, they've both done incredibly well. They've come through really different routes, and I'm just looking forward to what I hope will be a really good final. So thanks to everyone that has joined live. I've seen a lot of messages coming into the chat. Just leave a comment, or I'm sure you've been commenting in the chat. I'll be looking through that later, but if you're here at a later date, leave a comment on the actual video and let me know your thoughts on these two players, maybe what you think they can do in the future as well. And if you have any strong feelings on who will win this particular match, by all means let me know that as well. I think the actual odds are now favoring Raducanu, which is probably because of what I've said about the numbers and some key numbers favoring her. But with Fernandez and her resistance, you just never know, and the confidence that she has from coming through those players. So over half an hour. It had to be a longer video because I've not been here so far this fortnight, so I wanted to give this match at the time of day. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll be back later on, because prior to the women's final, I will be taking a look ahead at the men's final between Novak Djokovic and Daniil Medvedev. Djokovic obviously going for that historic calendar Grand Slam. So apologies that I'm not doing that tomorrow, but I don't work on Sundays, so I need to get it done today before the women's final. So hopefully you will have the time to come and join me. If not, don't worry, it will be up to you at a later date. So thank you very much for joining me and for watching. I hope you really enjoy the women's final. I hope to see you later when I preview the next final, and I shall see you next time.